And now for your viewing pleasure, Luke Logan stars in The Case of the Guy I Never Found.
Crime Town, a jazzed-up little city with hundreds of folks being worked to the bone. Nobody realizes their friends are one bad decision away from becoming the kind of headline people pretend to read while actually looking for the funnies. It was a Monday, a real Monday. The sort of Monday that wakes you up with a punch to the throat and then asks if it can borrow $20. I'd been sitting watching commercials for around 7 hours before deciding it was time to get to work. Mainly because I was starting to feel aroused by a fabric softener ad, so I headed down to City Hall and checked out what jobs had been listed. The Gamma Enforcer Division had outsourced an arrest to anyone with handcuffs and a pair of cojones big enough to take down an armed man. I didn't have handcuffs, and my balls had been shrinking so fast they're practically in witness protection, but I needed the paycheck. I took the intel and headed to Tau Pharmaceuticals to track down the suspect. I arrived so late the building looked like it had already brushed its teeth and gone to bed. The security was tight, so I couldn't just let myself in. I had to use my problem-solving skills, which is always a gamble. After 45 minutes in the fence, long enough that I fell in and out of love with the most beautiful spider you've ever seen, I dropped into the office, just as I got word of a kidnapping case. No rest for the wicked, or whatever the hell I am. By the time I crawled back through the vents and got back to City Hall, I was already regretting leaving that fabric softener at home alone. Turns out the place I was looking for was in the same building I'd just been casing. Just my luck. I headed to the 16th floor and knocked on the door of the apartment the ransom note was left in. An ugly-looking drunk answered the door and looked at me as if she could hear this narration.
Buddy, you're not allowed here.
She wouldn't let me in, but the thing about a drunk is they gotta pass out sooner or later. I lingered in the hallway a while, trying to look natural, or as natural as a guy can look in a trench coat with his hands balled into fists. I picked the lock and let myself in. The lights wouldn't even turn on. Your husband gets kidnapped and the first thing you do is skip the electricity bill? I helped myself to a few things in the kitchen before I got to the note. These guys wanted $5,000 in exchange for the victim's safety. At that price, I'd expect him to come back fully serviced. Suddenly, the electricity sparked to life, so I snuck into the drunk's bedroom in search of a computer password. I found it scrawled on a note by her bedside and headed straight for the office. Just as I was about to log in, the phone split to silence. For someone whose husband had gone missing, she didn't seem too cut up about it. I logged into the computer, hoping she'd just go back to bed, but it wasn't my lucky day. She entered the office and we proceeded to have a round of fisticuffs, which ended with me in the hospital, my ego bruised and my pockets empty. By the time I was allowed to leave, it was already 11 p.m. I had just 2.5 hours to find our missing man and figure out who took him. I needed to call the number on the note, tell them I left the money in the basement just like they asked, but a payphone doesn't take IOUs. I asked around for change, but Crime Town ain't got a lot of philanthropists.
Get out of here.
Like I'd give you anything.
I ran back to my apartment and picked up the phone. No change needed.
You got the cash. Listen carefully. Leave it in the basement of Doll Projects. New Enforcers. Got that.
I called the number and returned to the building, hiding in the shadows, waiting for the crook to reveal himself. But I just couldn't wait, and headed back to the victim's apartment. A neighbor was staring at the door like it owed her money, then shuffled down the stairs. At her pace, she'd hit the basement just in time for the curtain call. When she arrived, I threw my handcuffs on her and searched. Out came a shotgun, a hammer, and some half-eaten noodles. I didn't know what she was up to, but it sounded organized. With her handcuffed in the basement, I headed back up to the 16th floor to search her apartment. Perhaps find the victim. All I found was her husband who threw punches like he was mailing him second class. I knocked him out cold and began snooping before he woke up. multiple notes about debt and money problems, and a single note about a vacant lot that could be used for something. Just as I was checking the search history on their computer, the security system woke up. The husband was gone, so I fled. I barreled down the stairs, husband in tow. The once handcuffed crook popped up like a bad sequel. I kept running, only to slam into two armed strangers blocking the exit. I had to find a way down. I dove down the shaft. It wasn't a plan, it was a shortcut, mostly to the hospital. I awoke in the hospital at 5 a.m., deadline blown, victim probably toast, and just in time for breakfast. The vacant lot was my last hope. I headed over there and snooped around. All I found was a cop who didn't seem too happy to see me trespassing. I ran again and found myself back in the mean streets of Crime Town. The case was bankrupt, just like me. No leads, no suspect in custody, no victim in sight. So I did the only thing a professional could. I filled out the paperwork with doodles and vaguely mentioned the woman I had arrested and who had subsequently escaped. Technically, I hadn't solved anything, but I did point the finger at the right crook, and that was enough for me. I went home, crawled into bed. I hoped tomorrow I'd wake up less of a liability.
He walked in with a pocket full of losses, eyes like dice, and a heart full of debts. I lit my smoke with a whisper of warning, said, "Careful, darling, I'm a dangerous bet." Red lips, red dress, red...